rest. And take this into your consciousness. Peace, be still and know that I am. In the silence. In the silence. In the silence. So now ever so gently take a deep breath in and fully release it. Hold this sacred space that you've created inside of you and in the outside in this room right now. The energy of this collective consciousness. Peace, be still and know that I am. Another deep breath in, and as you do this time, if you're comfortable, you can wiggle your fingers and toes. You might roll your shoulders. Another deep breath in, and when you're ready, you can open your eyes and be in this space. Good morning again. I'm Rev Ron Holdaway, and it's always a pleasure to be up here to be with you and see your faces. And even in the meditation, I take a peek to watch the time and all that. And it's so peaceful. The energy that we receive when we do group meditation is just amazing to me. So good morning. It's a beautiful spring morning, isn't it? And yes, the vernal equinox, the first day of spring, was this Tuesday, March the 19th. Earlier than usual. It's usually on the 20th or 21st. It's earlier because we had a leap year this year. And if you don't know, the equinox is the vernal equinox, or first day of spring, is when the axis of the Earth is on a 23.5 degree angle, and when that axis lines up with the circular orbit, that's when we have spring. What we call it marks the time when the day and the night are the same all over the world. The amount of time split directly in half. So it's a very unique time, amazing time actually to watch that. So spring runs March the 20th through March the 19th through June this year. March the 24th it was this week. Yeah. So anyhow, it's a beautiful day, and today is Palm Sunday. And this day is celebrated in Orthodox Christianity as Jesus' triumphant entry into Jerusalem when his followers waved palm branches and shouted Hosanna. And the narrative in the Gospels has been studied and studied and studied by theologians and historians. Many follow the literal narrative without question. Some look to the narrative as non-literal, like we do in Unity. It's a story and a myth, and stories and myth doesn't mean it's untrue. It means the truth we gain out of it, for me, for what I've learned over the years, is more powerful than studying it literally. For we know that most of the Bible is not historically accurate. The teaching doesn't diminish the teachings at all. And so here we are at Palm Sunday. A lot of churches will have the palms, and I believe the gospel writers were trying to convey an experience of truth, which is true in most of the writings, not specific details. We get hung up too much on the details and think we have to throw the baby out with the bathwater because the details may not be totally accurate. The Jewish writers knew that, and Judaism all throughout have known that. We just got it kind of little crossways in the West, particularly in the Western Christian Church, and to put too much emphasis on the literal happenings. There's even some. John Shelby Spong is a project. Bill and I were talking about this before the service because I was looking at this. I follow John Shelby Spong a lot. He's passed now, but he's an Episcopal bishop who wrote a number of books. One of the books he wrote, Jesus for the Non-Religious. He also wrote a book, Why Christianity Must Change or Die, or another book called Rescuing the Bible from the Fundamentalism. So he wrote many books about this topic of literal interpretation of the Bible. It's a very interesting read. There's a couple chapters about Easter, Palm Sunday, and how that narrative has been. It's amazing how it's been pushed down throughout, for almost 2,000 years. But this week in our book, Ellen Davenport, who wrote a book called The Five Principles, she wrote the book clarifying and expanding on the five principles of unity. These were created back in the mid-'80s by Connie Basil Fillmore Basie, and that's when these five principles are relatively new. It's a summary of the five teachings, and Ellen Davenport is one who wrote a book about that we've studied. But she gives this week in our booklet, she gives excellent essay, as she's done throughout this, about summarizing the events of Palm Sunday and how Jesus came into Jerusalem riding on a donkey. And by the way, the other way we interpret the Bible stories is metaphysically. The Jerusalem means peace. The donkey means humility. Every character, Charles Fillmore, a co-founder of Unity, interpreted these stories in the Bible, and you can interpret every one of them metaphysically to find the meaning find the meaning and the truth beyond the words. But Ellen this week gives a great summary of these, of his witness as he came into Jerusalem, and of particularly letting go of outcome. He knew, according to the story, he was in trouble. As he came into Jerusalem, he knew there was going to be trouble. And she points out all the ways that Jesus let go of ego, and he let go of others' approval. He let go of being right. He let go of outcomes. And that's what we'll talk about for a little bit today. So what we talk about this week in the church is referred to as the Holy Week. And without interference, trusting in his highest good, Jesus walked into this Holy Week. In short, Jesus' examples are master examples of accepting what is. And I put what is in quote. So, but it was also on Palm Sunday when a family's 6-year-old son had to stay home because he had a sore throat. So when the rest of the family returned home carrying palm branches, Bill asked if anybody had a palm branch. The little boy asked what they were for. His mother says, people held them over Jesus' head as he walked by. The boy said, disappointed, he said, wouldn't you know it? The boy, he fumed. The one Sunday I don't go to church and Jesus shows up. So that's another story you can add to the myth of Palm Sunday. Noted teacher Jacques Gawain, many of you have heard her over the years, creative spiritual teacher and author. She said, anything in life that we don't accept will simply make trouble for us until we make peace with it. You read that again. Anything in life that we don't accept will simply make trouble for us until we make peace with it. Letting go of outcomes is a major paradigm view of the world. It's a worldview when you can say we can let go of paradigms, of the spiritual practice of accepting what is. For we all know when we let go of outcomes on this journey, we find the peace, the love, the wisdom, the wholeness that we are seeking when we let go of the outcome. Letting go of the outcome is letting go of worry, letting go of being right, letting go of fear, letting go of ego. And you know, we've studied Michael Singer's book, Living Untethered, in the last year. He says that letting go of outcome is learning to surrender. It's learning to surrender. Letting go of outcome is learning to surrender. Surrender is not suppression. It's not about control. Surrender is letting go of weakness and being committed enough to carry out our intent. Our intention to be free, to be whole. We must learn and be fully willing to relax and allow the beautiful energy in us to flow through us. So he reminds us, again in his book, Living Untethered, that letting go is not a struggle or an act of control. That's also the mystical experience of the 12-step program. It's surrender. And you've heard the phrase, surrender to win. It's one of the paradoxes that we have to deal with, not only people that are addicted to food and alcohol and sex and everything else, but even people that are, if we're addicted to our own thought. Richard Rohr says we all should be in a 12-step program because we're so addicted to the way we think. We're addicted to the same, to our thoughts. So we should be in a 12-step program just to release our own thinking. And that's the part about being right. Speaking of that, you know, do you remember what I talked about last week? Yeah, that's not a test. That's the one thing you learn. Yeah. Yeah, you let it go. Exactly. Good point, Bob. Letting go of being right. Ellen, in her book, that last week we talked about letting go of being right. Well, right after I gave that message, we got into our annual meeting last week, and then I got into a contest of who was right with Becky. So I'm letting that go. I was not right. Becky was right, and I was not right.
I said I wasn't right.
You said you weren't right, but you were. So the point is that part of what I was saying in that, and what Ellen says in the text, is our beliefs, what we think. I knew, or our memories, even our memories at the time. I knew the memory that I had of that event about what our budget was and how much. I knew it was right, just like that in that second. It didn't take me long. As soon as I walked out the door, I said, uh-oh, I wasn't right. So that's what we have to let go of. If we don't let go of that, Michael Singer puts it this way, those are the samskaras. Those are the blockages that block us from our highest good. Now, anything that we say about this is not about guilt or shame or beating ourselves up. None of this is about that. We've done enough of that. I don't forget where I first heard it. We should on ourselves enough. There are no shoulds. Don't should on yourself. We should do this, we should do that. Don't should on yourself. We don't bring guilt and shame into our life. So again, we're reminded that letting go is not a struggle or an act. It is much, much subtler than that. So imagine you're in a tug of war. You've probably heard this story, but it's a great story to tell, especially in this context of accepting what is and letting go of the outcome. So imagine you're at the end of the rope of a tug of war game, and at the end of that rope, the other end of the rope, you're by yourself, and at the other end is the NFL team, is a whole NFL team. And so now you're fixing to get into a tug of war battle, and quickly you knew this was coming, so you learned all the techniques about digging your heels in and position your body and focus on your weight, how to position your weight, all these techniques. And you realize you're about to fall on your face. And then suddenly part of this story is Yoda appears. Yoda comes in, and Yoda thinks everybody's name is Luke. So he says, Luke, you know what to do. Let go, Luke. Let go. Luke says, what do you mean, let go? I'll be poured through the mud head first. Let go you must, said Yoda. I don't get it. How do I just let go when this force of the NFL team is pulling me on the other end of the rope? Not hands or feet. Relax your hands. Relax. Yoda keeps saying. And then not your hands. Luke says, not hands, feet, legs, and body position. I can't let go. That's how this tug of war would end. I'd be dragged through the mud. Over it will be, Luke, if you relax your hands. Over it will be if you relax your hands. I was years ago with one of my sons. I was in an experiential workshop. It was a 4-day workshop. And I had an experience of this. We were doing an exercise. It's hard to explain. It's experiential, so I can't really do it justice. But it was doing an exercise where trying to relate to the struggle or hurt or trauma that we've had in our life. And we were demonstrating that by hitting our hands on the floor as hard as we could. We were laying on the floor, and we would hit the floor as hard as we could. I remember my hands were red, and some were even black and blue, because to release the drama and the struggle, they were hitting their hands. And finally, to release that, how do you stop that? Stop hitting the floor. Release the rope, drop the rope, and the struggle is over. Practice letting go of outcomes. Practice letting go of the rope. You will not only you get to a point where you can live in an elevated inner state. Every spiritual leader and teacher promises that. That is a promise that we are practicing. You will become a blessing on earth, living from this state of inner being. What? Me a blessing? Me? Are you saying that in your mind? Me a blessing? Yes. Any place you go, you can carry this peace to touch everyone and anything that you come across. Let go of the outcome. Accept what is. So why don't we do this? Why do we hang on? You've heard the thing, we hang on to these events and people in our lives we have fingernail prints on them. Does it scare you to consider dropping the rope? Is it scary to drop the rope? Letting go of the dramas in our lives is hard to do. It's hard to do. It's hard to let go of the dramas. We're caught up in the drama. And even if we know we can't do it, or we struggle to do it, when we eliminate hanging onto the rope, there's a bit of peace. I want to repeat this. In our discussions, this is not about creating any guilt. It's not about creating guilt and shame. If you're hanging on to something, hang on to it as long as you need, but know there's probably more peace at the end if we drop the rope. What we study and teach is ways to look at the blockages that keep us from our higher true self. So if you're like me, you probably ask, well, how do I get caught up avoid getting caught up in these outer conditions that we live in? We live in the world. Suppose we get a not so good diagnosis from our doctor. we're very aware at times, we're very aware of it, but aren't we told to not get caught up in the negative? Sometimes I just need a good cry, a cleansing cry. However, I worry about giving that energy to a negative thought that stimulates the emotion. So what can we do? Many of us who practice power of positive thinking teach that we should turn away at the outset of a negative condition or situation because we give it more power. If we stare at it fearfully, we give it more power, or can give it more power. Metaphysically, this is sound theory if we are deeply anchored into the belief of the metaphysical that we can let go and just have positive thoughts about everything in the world. Spiritual masters from antiquity of all ages have taught that while we may be in this world, we are not of it. That's what that really means. In other words, our physicality may be subject to the reality of the conditions we encounter right now, right here today. And we know as spiritual beings, we know there is a higher reality based in our oneness with the divine, to which we aspire. We aspire that defines the perfect perfection of who we are. We live in two worlds. We live in right now, and we know the truth about who we are. So we always say we are human beings. We are spiritual beings having a human experience. We're also human beings having a spiritual experience. The answer is yes to both. Let me rephrase that again. Are we human beings having a spiritual experience, or are we spiritual beings having a human experience? You have to play that in your mind a little bit. But the answer is both, yes. We must seek to find balance between these two realities, which confounds us much of the time. Now, again, this is not a judgment. This is what the spiritual teachers teach us. If we are not fully enlightened, and we're still walking around on this planet, so most of us aren't, the not of this world belief sets the bar very high. So not of this world, it's a very high bar. And we spend much time suffering and feeling guilt and shame if we think it is the only approach, the challenges we encounter on this earthly journey. So in other words, we beat ourselves up because we can't let go. We can't let go of the outcome on certain things. And if you get nothing out of this today, let go. No guilt, no shame, no more. All of us have had at some point in our lives to deal with something unplanned, let alone undeserved, a frightening medical diagnosis, as we talked about, a sudden change in a significant relationship, a spouse, a son, a daughter, the loss of a lifetime career. So how do we embrace the what is, the quote, the what is, in a way that allows us to respond proactively rather than respond out of fear? The first step is acceptance. Accept what is. This doesn't mean, of course, that we have to like what is. It means being willing to see the apparent reality of the moment. It may still frighten us, and that's okay, but the practice is to breathe. The practice is to breathe and be with it. The first step is acceptance. The first step to letting go of outcome is accepting what is. This alone can gain the power we give to a condition or circumstance. The second step is to make space in our mind and our heart for the power that is greater than us. It's actually greater than our physical self because it's what's in us. And wrap around that belief in that divine presence through contemplative prayer and meditation. And even an empowering way is with the serenity prayer. Y'all know the serenity prayer. God grant me the serenity to accept the things I cannot change, the courage to change the things I can, and the wisdom to know the difference. Anybody in 12-step group will tell you, I've probably said that, several million times. I mean, that's no exaggeration. Because we have to be able to let go of the outcome, and that's one way of doing it. That prayer opens us to acknowledge what is. Doesn't mean we have to like it at the moment, but it gives an opening to guidance and inner knowledge of knowing of how to live in grace and ease and to let go of the outcome. Divine surrender opens the portal to a sense of inner peace that allows us to begin to see the world through new eyes. Mindfully accepting what is doesn't mean it is our destiny. It simply cracks the door to a higher reality through which the light of our true self shines in the present moment. And that's why we're here. That's what all of us are here to do, and to share that with others outside of this. I like this, the ancient saying that says, "As within, so without; as above, so below." So this week, I invite you to practice letting go of outcomes. Drop the rope to live fully and to love wastefully. Relax. Fall into yourself. And remember this, we don't find our way back to yourself, your true self. You don't find your way back. You simply cease to leave it. Namaste.